Our existential crisis. What is to be done? Humanity's capacity to inflict mass harm on itself has been accelerating since the mid-21st century and is now approaching a state where it can wreck civilization and potentially eliminate our species. 10 interconnected megathreats to human existence are bearing down on us. They are described in my book, Surviving the 21st Century, and in the work of the Council for the Human Future. These threats cannot be solved one by one, as solving one threat generally only makes others worse. Consequently, they must all be solved together, at the same time, and using cross-cutting solutions that make none of them worse. This is a complex problem, and it cannot be remedied with simple solutions. It cannot be solved by nations acting alone, but only by a whole-of-earth approach. Here is a brief review of what the latest science is saying about each of the megathreats. Extinction. The current mass extinction rate is 1,000 to 10,000 times higher than the natural background rate. It is currently proceeding 3 times faster than the event that took out the dinosaurs. It is entirely due to humans. It may become the second worst such event in Earth history. The loss of species at such a rate is predicted to cause the collapse of key ecosystems that sustain human life. Climate. The latest IPCC report indicates that even if we meet the Paris goals, a global temperature of +3 degrees Celsius is still possible by 2100. Despite moves to limit carbon dioxide emissions in some countries, they continue to increase worldwide. Currently, they total 40 billion tonnes a year and will accelerate as economic activity increases. CO2 concentrations are the highest in human history at 419 parts per million. And NASA warns that the Earth is now trapping twice as much heat as it did in 2005. The ice caps are melting and sea levels are rising much faster than predicted. Under business as usual, we are on track for +5 degrees by 2100. At +3 degrees, the world will lose about 1/3 of its food supply, creating famines, mass migration, and wars. Heat waves will kill millions. There are around about 5 trillion tonnes of frozen methane in the Earth's crust, vastly more powerful as a climate driver than CO2. If this gets loose, we are quite literally cooked. Pollution. The world produces around about 220 billion tonnes of chemical emissions every year. That is 5 times more than our climate emissions. This is going to double by 2030 and triple by 2050. There are 350,000 individual man-made chemicals, and most of them have never been tested for human safety. These poison our air, our food, our water, our homes and workplaces, and deaths from chemical poisoning and disease are now around about 12 million a year, according to the World Health Organization, making this the worst mass homicide in human history. It is damaging human IQ and causing pandemics of brain disease, obesities, and cancers, such as we have never seen before. Very little is presently being done to prevent it. Resources. The world is entering a freshwater crisis, with over half the human population facing acute scarcity by 2050. Losses of topsoil are now around 45 to 75 billion tonnes every single year, and they are going to halve the area on which we can grow food by the mid-century. The world has already lost 1/3 of its forests, and they are continuing to shrink at a rate of about 10 million hectares per year. 90% of the world's fish stocks are now fully exploited or overfished. The number of ocean dead zones has tripled since the 1950s. And humanity is currently using a full year's worth of resources in just 7 months. Nuclear weapons. The Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists has set the doomsday clock at 100 seconds to midnight, the highest threat level since the atomic bomb was invented. Modernization of nuclear programs, I'm quoting here, in multiple countries have moved the world into less stable and manageable territory, the doomsday clock says. Development of hypersonic glide missiles, ballistic missile defenses, and flexible weapons delivery systems may raise the possibility of miscalculation. Governments in the United States, Russia, and other countries appear to consider nuclear weapons more and more usable, increasing the risks of their actual use. The bulletin rates the nuclear threat as far worse, for example, than of COVID-19. Pandemic disease. There have been 6 pandemics since the year 2000. Flu, H1N1, MERS, SARS, Ebola, and COVID. HIV is continuing to rampage. On average, a new pandemic arises every 2 to 3 years. Primary drivers are overpopulation, environmental destruction, travel, and scientific error. The resumption of travel will increase their spread. New plagues are unavoidable so long as populations remain high and densely packed. Some of these plagues will be more deadly than COVID. Population. World population will reach 8 billion in 2023. It is growing at the fastest rate ever of 80 million people, or about 1% a year. Urban population is 4.4 billion, and megacities face possible collapse due to water scarcity, fragile food chains, climatic impacts, and failing infrastructure. Global fertility rates are currently about 2.4, that's 2.4 babies per woman, which is about 0.2 above replacement, although they are coming down slowly. The UN Population Division's median forecast has the population peaking in the 2060s and starting to decline naturally around 2100, from around about 10 or 11 billion people. Now that is 5 times more than the Earth can support sustainably. Food insecurity. The world food supply is on a knife edge, as we are already seeing with the Ukrainian conflict. Loss of access to fresh water, loss of topsoil, and a more hostile climate means that agriculture will be unable to supply humanity's needs from the mid-century on. There will be an increase in droughts, famines, pests, refugee crises, and wars, leading to food shocks. Despite this, the world clings to an outdated model of food production, when other, safer, healthier, and more effective means to produce food exist. On average, 2 out of every 3 deaths are diet-related. Uncontrolled technologies. Dangerous new technologies such as artificial intelligence, robot killing machines, synthetic biology, nanotechnology, and quantum computers are proliferating without public oversight or government control. These pose catastrophic risks of their own that are presently uncontained. Mass delusion. One of the most dangerous threats to the human future is the deluge of false information and beliefs that are inundating society. Misinformation spread by politicians, the fossil fuel sector, the media, ideological extremists, well-meaning simpletons, or nutcase conspiracists. The tsunami of utter nonsense threatens to destroy public faith in science and sabotage global efforts to overcome the major threats that I have just listed. Together, these 10 megathreats add up to the greatest existential challenge that humans have ever faced in our million-year existence on the Earth. However, it is a challenge that can be solved. We have the brains and the technology to solve it. We know the answers. We do not yet have the institutions, the leadership, or the collective understanding and will. Now here, for example, are 9 of the most urgent solutions. 1, we need to outlaw all nuclear weapons, eliminate their stockpiles, and safely recycle or bury their materials. 2, we need to end all extraction and use of fossil fuels and their byproducts, pesticides, plastics, and petrochemicals by 2030. We need to replace them with renewable energy, and we need to reforest half the world's land area. 3, we need to create a circular global economy in which every resource is recycled and nothing is lost, wasted, or allowed to pollute. We need to develop a renewable world food system consisting of regenerative agriculture, urban food systems that recycle water and nutrients, and deep ocean farming of plants, fish, and marine animals. We need to return half of the world's farmlands to forest or wilderness to end the 6th extinction. We need to create a Stewards of the Earth program consisting of farmers and Indigenous people to implement it. We need to create a new human right not to be poisoned, and a Clean Up the Earth Alliance to eliminate all forms of toxic pollution. We need to introduce a global inventory and universal safety testing of all manufactured chemicals. We need to introduce a world plan to progressively and voluntarily reduce the human population to around about 2 billion by 2120. We need to prevent future pandemics by ending environmental destruction, banning dangerous scientific experiments, discouraging global travel, creating early warning systems, and by lowering the human population. Put women in charge. Unlike men, women do not start wars, wreck oceans, fell forests, ruin landscapes, pollute, and poison. They do, on the whole, care about the needs of future generations. All these solutions are based on science and require science to monitor their successful implementation. At their heart is the ability to communicate the science, to share the solutions with 8 billion fellow humans so that we can all act together for the first time in our history. The challenge is vast, but the solutions are both feasible and available. The issue is, can we communicate them in time to prevent the onset of catastrophe? At present, no government on Earth has a policy for human survival. It is up to the communicators of science to convince them that they must have one. It is up to us to make the case for a science-based Earth system treaty and a universal plan of action. Our task is to help save literally billions of lives that will otherwise be needlessly lost. Thank you.